10 WWE wrestlers who refused to win at WrestleMania. Number 10, AJ Styles vs Chris Jericho. Now, heading into AJ Styles' WrestleMania debut, fans were convinced that AJ would secure a huge win over Chris Jericho. AJ was the firm favorite for the matchup, as this was his first ever WrestleMania matchup, and it wasn't as if Jericho needed the win, as his popularity and star power couldn't be touched during this time. Shockingly, WWE decided to have Jericho win the match, and it was later reported that AJ wanted to lose the match. Was this because AJ wanted to show that he was a team player? Well, potentially. It may have also been that AJ was of the belief that he shouldn't just walk into a prominent spot on the WrestleMania card and just win, and it was his duty to do the honors. Number 9, Mark Henry vs The Undertaker. One of the names that was pitched to end the iconic streak of The Undertaker was Mark Henry. Henry wrestled The Undertaker at WrestleMania 22 in a casket match, and when this news first surfaced, fans were stunned, as there was no way on paper that Henry was gonna defeat the legendary Undertaker in his, well, own match. And according to Mark Henry, during an interview with Heavy, the creative call of Henry defeating The Undertaker was very close to happening, but ultimately, he would turn it down. It was close, and there was some conversation about me being the one to break the streak, and if they would have asked me, I would have been like, hell no, I don't want to carry that weight. And Henry, just like several other names who have turned the offer down, realized the magnitude of the win. Conquering the streak at that time would have arguably been bigger than any world title win, and it's not something that talent were comfortable openly accepting, which is completely understandable. Number 8, Kane vs The Undertaker. Kane was a name that The Undertaker loved working with. This affection ran so deep that The Undertaker reportedly wanted Kane to break the streak on more than one occasion. It's believed that WrestleMania 20 was one of the events discussed for this to take place, and it was even rumored that The Undertaker wanted Kane to break it at a subsequent WrestleMania event. Kane was well established for being one of the most selfless pro wrestlers of all time, so it was hardly a surprise that the man said no thanks. Kane had such an elite reputation in this regard, and when The Undertaker put over his kayfabe half-brother on a number of pay-per-view events in 2010, this was likely The Undertaker's way of giving Kane a lap of honor. Number 7, The Rock vs JBL. Now, in 2005, as WWE were putting together their creative plans for WrestleMania 21, one of the ideas WWE was sold on was JBL defending the WWE title versus The Rock. The Rock was basically retired at this point in time, but WWE believed that this would reignite the product and make fans interested in what WWE were offering. The initial creative plans legitimately called for The Rock to win. However, with The Rock having extensive commitments in Hollywood, it's unknown how this would have worked. Of course, the Great One turned the match and the huge win down, and instead WWE would commit to making John Cena the new face of the company, which was 100% the correct call. Number 6, The Undertaker vs Roman Reigns. WrestleMania 33 was designed to be The Undertaker's final ever WWE match. He was going to wrestle Roman Reigns in the main event of the show, and he insisted on putting Reigns over in the biggest way imaginable. Winning the main event match was simply out of the question for the dead man, and he wanted to go out by putting over the new face of WWE. Whilst this mentality was appreciated, the match itself denied the man any favors, as it was a complete letdown. The dead man wasn't just in the right place physically or mentally to deliver a high-quality match, and this led him to having several more matches down the road. The Undertaker has spoken at length regarding how bad he felt for messing up Reigns' big moment. Whilst The Undertaker may feel extremely bad, in the long run it failed to hinder either man's legacy or status in WWE. Number 5, John Cena vs Bray Wyatt. It's a common consensus that Bray Wyatt should have defeated John Cena at WrestleMania 30. Cena had no reason to win this match, and Wyatt winning such a huge match on the grand stage could have been an incredible moment for him. 6 years later at WrestleMania 36, the two would have a rematch, and it was almost as if Cena went out of his way to make Wyatt look good as humanly possible. The two collided in a wild yet fun Firefly Funhouse match, and the match acted as a study of Cena's character and persona. The initial plans for the match were for the two to collide in a regular 1v1 matchup, and if this was indeed planned, then Cena would have done the favor and wouldn't have hesitated in putting Wyatt over. It was reported 3 years prior that Cena insisted on putting Wyatt over on SmackDown during Wyatt's reign as WWE Champion, and Cena evidently wanted to right the wrongs of WrestleMania 30. Number 4, Edge vs The Undertaker. Now, the main event of WrestleMania 24 was set to be Edge defending the world title against The Undertaker, and internal conversations within the company were stating that Edge was going to win the match. It's unknown why exactly WWE believed it was a time to end the streak, but it was possible that they may have been under the impression that the streak had just run its course. but Edge would ultimately turn down the offer, and Edge reflected on his executive call during an appearance on the Impulsive podcast. Yeah, so we were going to meet in the main event of Wrestlemania 24, and I think the streak at that point was 15-0. It was kind of thrown by me like, what do you think? I was like, absolutely not. Why would we do that? That makes zero sense to me. I'm already a made man. I'm in the main event of Wrestlemania. What's it gonna do for me? Sure, it would do something, I guess, but let's save that. Let's save that for somebody who can really use that boost. The WWE Hall of Famer had a great point. What benefit would it have had to his standing in the company? Edge was already a top guy and there was no need for him to receive such a monumental win. Number 3, Batista versus Daniel Bryan. Well, upon returning to WWE in 2014, Batista was promised the world. He was promised a main event match versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania 30, and he was promised a world title reign. And naturally, due to the rise of Daniel Bryan, some of WWE's promises would be broken. Batista would end up tapping out to Bryan in the main event of WrestleMania. According to Batista himself, during an appearance on MLW Radio's Writers' Room, it was his call to put Bryan over in the main event, and the Animal took issue with WWE's call to follow up the win with a poorly executed angle on Raw the next night. Here's what I hated about the whole Daniel Bryan thing. We did the thing at Mania, which was great, man. I wanted to put him over. I agreed to tap out to him. It was no big deal. I never made a big deal out of it. The thing I made a big deal out of was what we did that deal that night. The next night, after he'd gotten off a stretcher, gone through hell the whole night, and it wasn't his call, but they wanted him to come back not selling anything. Like not selling that he was sore or beat up or injured. Nothing. Batista was rumored to face Bryan in the main event of the 2014 Payback pay-per-view, but it's believed that Batista was on board with continuing the rivalry between his Evolution stable and The Shield. Knowing how well received this angle was, this was definitely the right call. Number 2, Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston. The Kofi Mania storyline in 2019 gripped the wrestling world, and one of the names responsible for the storyline being such an overwhelming success was Daniel Bryan. Bryan used his political power within the company to push for Kingston to get the spot at WrestleMania 35, and Bryan would insist on putting over Kingston. Kingston would reveal this during an appearance on the After the Bell podcast, and Kingston gave Bryan credit for understanding with what the fans wanted. He pushed for that to happen because the plans weren't for me to be at WrestleMania. I'm not sure who it was for Daniel to face, but it wasn't me, and Daniel went in and went to bat for me and the situation for the title match between us to happen, so we had a big part in it too. He was saying a testament to his state of mind as far as advancing the business and doing the right thing for the people and for the best match and product for the people to take in, so kudos to Daniel Bryan. Now, this was a trend that ran through Bryan's entire WWE run. He always seemed to know what the audience wanted, and he always knew when it was time to put someone over. And number 1, Randy Orton versus The Undertaker. One of the names that fans would have likely accepted to end the streak was the legend killer Randy Orton. In 2005, Orton was slowly emerging as a major player for WWE, and he needed a big win to solidify himself as a future legend for the company. As WWE rolled into Orton vs. The Undertaker at WrestleMania 21, there were endless rumors that they were going to have Orton win, but they ultimately had the dead man extend his win streak. It was later reported that Orton turned down the idea of winning that match, which highlighted the respect he had for the dead man. Even though WWE's resident Viper would turn this offer down, The Undertaker would put over Orton at subsequent pay-per-view events, including the 2005 SummerSlam. But there you have it, folks, 10 WWE wrestlers who refused to win at WrestleMania. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.